Hi there, it's Claire. If you're hearing me, that means you're listening to the free preview of one of our Patreon episodes. We switch off every week between free and Patreon exclusive episodes, so if you'd like to hear the rest of this conversation, head over to patreon.com/thisguysucked and join our honorary haters club. A list of sensitive themes and topics covered in this episode can be found in the episode description. Welcome to This Guy Sucked, the show where we prove that it's never too late to have haters and you can't libel the dead. I'm your host, Dr. Claire Aubin, and I'm a historian, writer, and most importantly, certified hater. On this show, we talk about people from throughout history with legacies that need a little updating. Whether it's because of their politics, their behavior, or their impact on society and culture, these guys actually kind of sucked. And we bring in a new scholar every week to tell us why. With me today is Dr. Lassabe Shepherd, who is a historian of American... she's a historian. That's a normal way to say that. She's a historian of American colleges and universities. She's the host of the weekly American Campus podcast, the author of Resistance from the Right, Conservatives and the Campus Wars. And you can find her writing all over the place, including The Guardian, The New York Times, NPR, my favorite, Teen Vogue. So we're very lucky that she has time in her busy schedule to chat with me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here. You've had like a fantastic lineup of guests, so it's an honor to be invited.
Amongst the sort of vaunted pantheon of people talking about guys they hate.
Glad to be with the rest of them.
Well, yeah. Here's a question. I think about it a lot because of what I research. Because what I research, similar to what you research, always like shows up in the news as being sort of like constantly relevant, and that sometimes can be frustrating. If you could go back and pick a different historical topic to become an expert on, perhaps one that isn't always this level of politically relevant, what would you pick? What are your like other history things that you like to learn about?
So actually, I wouldn't even be a historian. I would be a sociologist. I'm so fascinated by the way that groups of people interact with each other. I'm kind of, I don't know. I feel like I'm an amateur sociologist anyway. I'm not trained in that, but I try to read a lot of sociology, and I'd always just catch myself in situations where I'm just like observing people and what they're doing. Maybe that's just because I'm nosy. I don't know. But I would just step out of the historical world and go entirely to a different field.
To be fair, I spent a lot of time being like, historians are essentially just people who are paid to gossip, because at some point, like our job is literally to find things out about people and then tell their business to the whole world. Like that is truly our job. Sometimes they're dead, sometimes they're not. We just do that as our job. So it makes sense that you'd be like, well, I'm just a little nosy. Like, yeah, that's your job, actually. Even now, that's your job.
My job is to find the tea.
Yeah, pretty much. I when I think about this, I think I said this on an episode that came out or is about to come out. At the time someone hears this, it will have already come out. But that my favorite historical topic that has nothing to do with mine is like weird medieval girls. I think like little medieval freak girls are like my favorite. I love reading books about them, like fiction, nonfiction. Like I think that I feel some strange like connection to like the idea of like a weird girl in a scriptorium to me is like, oh, so that's what doing a PhD is. So it's like, it feels natural that I have that's what I would be.
Maybe in an alternate life. Maybe that was you in a past era.
If I believed in past lives, I would be like, yeah, I'm a girl in a nunnery who's in a monastery who's writing things that she's not supposed to be writing. Okay. There is a reason for this show, so maybe we should talk about that. Who do you want to talk about today?
I would like to introduce listeners to a figure that they almost certainly have never heard of before, and that is Major General William David McCain. McCain was a historian. He had a PhD in history from Duke, and he worked as an archivist in some of the most important collections in the country, including the National Archives. And during World War II, he was a monuments man in Italy, tasked with preserving Italian arts, books, and other cultural artifacts, some of which he stole and kept for himself. But I think probably if listeners have ever heard of him, it's because of his longtime profession as the president of Mississippi Southern College, which today is the University of Southern Mississippi. And then one more tiny detail. He was a politician and fundraiser, an important voice for the Dixiecrats, the Mississippi States Rights Party. Yeah, and a speaker and a writer for the White Citizens Council, and a hero of the Sons of Confederate Veterans who still give annual awards in his honor. So that's who we're talking about today.
And, you know, and what's so funny is that we're not even into the, like, what's wrong with him? These are just our little, these are just little Easter eggs, little tidbits that are foreshadowing what his problem is going to be. So for some more sort of background on him, he has a PhD from Duke, and from there he started his career working at a bunch of different schools. A classic problem even 80 years ago, that you couldn't get a long-term job contract. Like the list, he worked at a lot of different schools. Actually, I was looking at this, and I was like, wow, I feel that he's adjunctification was happening then too. Like Ole Miss and Mississippi State.
Handful of community colleges in the Delta. Yeah. Oh,
yeah. And he did this before becoming the director of the Mississippi Department of Archives. And I would just like to say that this is the first real academic historian that we've talked about on the pod.
Oh, what an honor.
Yeah, we've had a few wacky self-styled ones who are like, I'm a historian, but none who were actually like academically trained to be a historian. So he gets the sort of dubious honor of being the first historian we critique. Although we're not really critiquing him for being a historian, which I think is funny. It's not even that. That's like...
Well, we can. There's a plagiarism allegation that we can get into.
Perfect. Even better. It will, you know what? We can talk about both the ethics of our field and our discipline, and also all of his other problems. He did write a bunch of history books. He also was a founding member of the Society of American Archivists. He worked for a few years at the U.S. National Archives. But yeah, he wrote a bunch of history books, some genealogical, others concerned that with like state and national history. So this is clearly a guy who's very concerned with what's happening in Mississippi and in some of the other southern states, as well as with the U.S. politically and historically, and has sort of made himself a part of that political establishment.
This guy spent his life fighting the Civil War.
Yeah.
And he died in the 1990s.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting that you can kind of see, even just from his bird's eye view biography / bibliography, you can look at that and be like, something's up with this guy. Like, I wonder what the problem is going to be. Because saying someone is a college president in Mississippi in the 50s and 60s should already raise eyebrows, I feel. We can get into that in just 1 second. He's also very involved in something that I think will be a good segue into what I want to talk about. He's very involved with the Mississippi State Sovereignty Commission.
Yeah.
Which on the face of it sounds fairly innocuous.
As it's designed to.
Yeah. Can you explain that to me and everyone at home?
Yeah. So the Sovereignty Commission was created to prevent school integration after the Brown Board Supreme Court decision. So Brown Board directly applied to K-12 schools, but it's a little unclear, or it was a little unclear, if the enforcement reached up to higher ed. Although many listeners will probably know that Southern states didn't abide by the K-12 recommendation anyway. They just shut down public schools rather than integrate them, and then created these private segregation academies for white kids, private, so they didn't have to follow the federal desegregation orders. But yeah, so that's what the Sovereignty Commission was designed to do, keep schools racially segregated.
Yeah, and so his relationship with that, I think, precipitates the conversation that we should be having / will be having on the podcast, which is, what's your main issue with him?
Why is he a villain? I wish I could explain in one sentence, but there are so many crimes, so I'll just list them from bad to worst. So first, and I do think this was a big deal because he was an academic historian, so it's the plagiarism allegations. or not allegations. He was actually, the AAUP and the AHA determined that he did plagiarize. So that's one. Second, he was a thief of international proportions. Third, fourth, and fifth.
Yeah, the Monuments Men thing. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Yeah. He tried to turn his college campus into a military base. He orchestrated Red Scares and Lavender Scares to purge faculty and students, especially women. And he set up a thankfully short-lived eugenics department on the campus in the 1970s. And
in the 70s?
In the 70s, yeah.
Late.
It didn't shut down until 1975, yeah. But it was like, even though I think officially, I'm going to periodize this as 71 to 75 that it was up and running, plans for it predated that back to the 1950s. But we'll get there. His chief crime, though, is that he was a conspirator in the arrest, torture, and imprisonment of Clyde Kennard, who was a student who tried to integrate the college in 1959. So those are his crimes. I'm sure there's more, but that's what I have for us today.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, thief of international proportions being low on the list does not bode well for the rest of this guy's life, career, and personality. Like to be like, well, that's number 2, and we've got 3 more that are 2 to 3 more that I want to talk about is wild. Where do you want to start?
I mean, we can start with, I guess we can go chronologically. Yeah. So like all good white supremacists, McCain was obsessed with his own genealogy. You mentioned a second ago that he was an archivist. He did work in the National Archives in D.C. for 2 years, but before that, he was a genealogist and archivist at the Morristown National Historical Park. And while he was there, he published a 120-volume study of his own family origins called the McCain Chronicles that traced his lineage all the way back to the Scottish Highlands. And it's really funny because when he became the president of Southern Miss, he added a Scottish Highlanders unit to the Southern Miss band. So there was a drum corps, a 30-piece bagpipe chorus, and they all wore the plaid of the McCain clan. And across campus, he had just like different renditions of his McCain family coat of arms and their colors, red and green, which is hilarious because the official colors of the college are not red and green, they're black and gold. And in the lobby of one of the buildings he constructed, the Performing Arts Center, there's this giant black rock that's engraved saying that it's stone from the Mingery Castle in Scotland, where the origins of the McCains, it's like a nod to here's a rock from where my family comes from. He's such a, I don't know. He's such a, I don't want to call him like a neo-Nazi because that's so boring, but I mean, you get the vibe, right? Like this man really loves his white Scottish heritage.
For sure. And can I just say, having lived in Scotland for many, many years of my adult life, Scottish people hate that when you do that. Like if you show up and you're like, my family is Clan McCain and they've been out of Scotland for 200 years. Scottish people are like, ew. Like they Scottish people do not claim you. I'm very sorry to say they're not interested in the fact that your family was at one point had a castle. We're talking, your great grandfather had some like that. They don't care about that. So it is very funny whenever I see people making that their whole personality. And I love that we have someone on the show that made being Scottish his personality.
That is William
McCain. Okay. So he sort of already starts off his career in life being like, who are really great white people. And then does he go to Italy after this? Wait, no. What are the plagiarism allegations? I want to go through this methodically.
The plagiarism allegations come at the end, actually. I have no idea if he wasn't plagiarizing before that, but he gets caught in 1967. But before that, if you want to go chronologically,
let's go chronologically.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm all over the place today.
No worries. I mean, truly, he probably was plagiarizing before 1945. But 1945 is where the story really picks up. So he was a soldier in World War II. And originally he worked as an anti-aircraft in an anti-aircraft artillery unit, but then he was reassigned as a military historian under Army officer Mark Clark, who is an avowed segregationist and xenophobe. So as his historian, McCain followed the U.S. Fifth Army across North Africa and Sicily and Italy. And then he took an assignment under Major Harry Bell in the new Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives units. So this is where he becomes a monuments man in the Lombardy region of northern Italy. So it was his job to locate and return not just cultural artifacts, but also evacuated government documents back to Rome. So in McCain's archives, there is an original copy of Mussolini's autobiography, The Story of the Year. And McCain's own inscription says that he took it from Mussolini's office. And this is one of 2 Mussolini texts in his papers at Southern. I don't think he was supposed to keep these, but I suspect he personally held on to them like as mementos, some sort of like testament to his sympathies for fascism and the American version of it that he was trying to play out across the South.